There are many ways to illustrate a book. Would you like to hear about one of them? Hello and welcome to a new episode of Bite-Sized Book History. I'm your host, Ali Alvis, who you may know better as Book Historia. I'm a book historian and curator of special collections at the Winterthur Library, part of the Winterthur Museum, Garden, and Library, just outside Wilmington, Delaware. Today we're going to look at the earliest printing method in the world, the woodblock. More specifically, woodblocks as a way to illustrate books. But before we get specific, let's take a quick look at the overall history of printing with wood, also called xylography, from xylo for wood and graph for writing. People have been carving wood pretty much since the beginning of time, but carved wood was first used as a printing tool not for books, but for cloth. The earliest surviving example of this is Chinese printed silk from the Han Dynasty, dating to before 220 AD, although there are descriptions of woodblock printed fabric being made in India even earlier, in 327 BC. But this is bite-sized book history, not bite-sized textile history. When do woodcuts start getting bibliographic? Woodblock printed books arose in part due to the spread of Mahayana Buddhism in China, which placed particular value on Buddhist texts as talismans and objects of power. By the 7th century, Mahayana Buddhists were printing prayers specifically to be used as talismans. These printed prayers, and the woodblocks to print them, spread from China to Japan and Korea in the 8th century. By the 11th century, woodblock printing had made its way to the Byzantine Empire, although it had wrapped back around to being used to print cloth again. And there is a very good reason for this. The spread of woodblock printing in Asia was facilitated by the invention of and use of paper. This is also before the development of the printing press. Printing in this period consisted of laying the paper on top of the inked woodblock and then rubbing over the back of the paper with a pad. In the 11th century, books in the West were still primarily made of parchment, prepared animal skin that was thicker than paper, therefore harder to do a good rubbing on, and texturally less receptive to the oil-based printing inks. It wasn't until paper production took root in Europe in the 14th century that the stage was set for woodblocks to hit Western books. And the primary way they did that is as illustrations and decorations in movable type publications starting in the mid-15th century. While wood was not strong enough to be carved into the tiny little letters to be sent through a printing press multiple times, just imagine how fragile the little lines of this letter would be. Woodcut illustrations could be set in the bed of the press with metal movable type. That's because both woodcuts and metal type are printed in relief. That is, the parts that stick up get inked and printed. It's the same idea as a rubber stamp. Here is a modern metal reproduction of a woodcut illustration. When creating a woodcut, the artist carves away the blank spaces, and the remaining areas are the image. This is in contrast to later printing methods like engraving and etching, in which the artist carves away the lines. In these methods, both called intaglio, the ink sits slightly below the surface of the plate. I will talk more about those processes in later videos, but the moral of the story here is that movable type and woodblocks were the dream team of early printed books. The fragility of wood lines I mentioned before deterred the majority of early woodcut artists from going into too much detail in their illustrations. Pearwood, cherry, and walnut were the preferred woods for block carvers due to their relative hardness. This meant they would last longer, but the hard wood was also tough to carve. An article from the Met compares these early examples, with their thick black lines and simplistic shapes, to coloring book pages. Woodcuts were the primary method of illustrating all genres of printed texts in the 15th and 16th centuries, including scientific works such as Conrad Gessner's Historia Animalium, literature like Dante's Divine Comedy, religious works such as the Bible, and even humorous works like a 1519 edition of the classical Roman humorous tale of the Golden Ass. The Nuremberg Chronicle, also known as the Liber Chronicarum, written by Hartmann Schedel and published in 1493, is a beautiful example of this period of woodcut artistry. It chronicled the creation of the world to the current age, and even speculated about the Last Judgment, and was copiously illustrated with over 1,800 woodcuts. This was easily the most image-heavy book ever published up to that point. It was a landmark of printing, with detailed scenes of cities never before illustrated and portraits of religious figures. These woodcuts were produced by the workshop of Nuremberg carver Michael Wohlgemuth over 5 years, during which time Wohlgemuth took on an apprentice named Albrecht Durer. If you haven't heard the name Albrecht Durer, you've probably at least seen some of his artworks, or works inspired directly by him. This self-portrait that launched a million historical crushes is Durer at 28, and the protagonist of the 2022 video game Pentiment is in part based on him. Durer blended Italian Renaissance sensibilities and composition with established techniques to heighten the art of the woodcut, using fine cross-hatching for shading, a very difficult effect to achieve in wood. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the actual carved woodblocks used in publications do not survive in huge numbers. If accidentally dropped during printing, they would chip and crack. And the eternal enemy of wood, the woodworm, also did not spare the blocks. You can see evidence of their destructive hole boring when the block is printed in these little white dots. One of the world's best collections of woodcuts is part of the Museum Planten Moretus in Belgium, which preserves over 14,000 examples of woodcuts produced by the Planten Moretus printing house. Even more remarkably, they've digitized all the blocks in their collection. You can find the digital collection on the Planten Moretus website and in my links below. That does it for this episode of Bite-Sized Book History. If you have any suggestions for future video topics, or if you want to fawn over Albrecht Durer with me, please drop me a comment. And make sure to like and subscribe to stay up to date on all of my videos. I'll see you next time, and remember, don't bite your books.